Welcome to the Noah Presgrove case today, focusing in on a key theme, whether it be an anomaly or not, repeated history or not. This is in regard to Noah Presgrove falling asleep in the back of a vehicle. Whilst that theory has been applied to the build-up to Noah's death and why he may have ended up down the highway, has it ever happened any time in the past? Not resulting in death, but resulting in being transported unknown to him, then waking up in a completely different area. And supposedly there have been stories online and people talking about it, that it has happened once and only once. So what is the probability that it happened again? So join me today as I share with you a backstory from what a couple of people have said, from Brooke Bounds Carter to, I think, one of Kaden Pressy's friends, possibly. And it stems back from screenshots, comments made on Facebook. So don't go anywhere. Make sure to stick around for the origins of where it came from, or at least some of the people that talked about it. And I'm going to read it. I'll analyse, break it down bit by bit, and give you my raw thoughts on the matter and the likelihood of it happening again. If it doesn't happen that often, but it has already occurred before, it can still be considered a bit of an anomaly because it's not the norm. It's not a routine. So the chances of it reoccurring may be slim, but when they do happen, as rare as it is, it can be more impactful, and there may be consequences as a result of it taking place. Welcome if you are currently here to this live premiere. Share your thoughts, reactions in the live chat box on the right side of the screen there. Welcome to those that are watching in the background as well. Feel free to just listen in or do whatever you're doing, and if you do want to share your additional comments, and for anyone watching on catch up after this video, be sure to drop a comment below under the video with your questions, answers, theories, and whether you agree or not with the possibility of Noah falling asleep in the back of a vehicle at the party and then being transported down the highway and then whatever happening. Leaving comments does help spread awareness on the case and keep things alive and going. But, shout out to other platforms and places which have been doing discussions in recent time. Facebook, case discussion page, ARC page. It does help a lot. But then I can step on in and give you my raw thoughts and to help keep a level of balance. As complex and deep as things can get, it can be overwhelming. But whilst I'm here, I'm going to break it down bit by bit so it can make more sense of the situation. So for any of you that have been dealing with it or on Facebook, wherever, there's lots of comments, lots of responses, fills your head. Well, here it's about slowing things down just a little bit, right? Slow it down, break it down, analyze it, and give that perspective. That's what I'm here to do, as well as going deeper than ever to highlight the possibilities and the what ifs. So with that being said, the order of how we'll do it today, we've got a couple of comments, the origins of key named individuals, share it with you, analyze it, then give my raw thoughts. If you are interested in these type of videos and ones in recent time, if you've missed any old videos, don't worry. It's all available to catch up on, located top right corner where the eye symbol is up there. You click on the eye symbol, you'll get the drop down menu box with the full playlist and some loose videos attached. If you'd like to support my channel, there are links to follow below in the comment section where the pinned messages by me. With that being said, let me introduce or reintroduce to you the backstory of Noah and the link to an event that happened in the past at some point with falling asleep. So as people And opinions can be divided from foul play, murder, to accident, and then some in between. Accident gone a bit too far, form of manslaughter, or a form of things being, accidental but then going too far but in an uncontrollable way. To bridge the gap of all this going on, at one point there was the possibility Tim Daniel is just an example of a person that suggested it. Other people did as well. And take in mind, Tim Daniel, an individual that considered murder at one point in the past and then looked at it from a different perspective of accident. So Tim has given patience in trying to understand it from different points of views. And that's what matters most. And other people have done that as well. I'm just using a quick example, okay? So the possibility, and it's a theory which has been talked about previously. I've done map analysis as well. But just so you're up to date with it, there is that possibility and the what if at 3:30 when Noah Presgrove supposedly walked away from the party house, supposedly heading east to cool down because he was drunk at the time and frustrated because he wasn't able to sleep in one of the girls' beds. The sleeping situation could have been influenced by earlier the side-by-side rollover, slight injuries, aches, strains or pains in the body, coming down from the adrenaline and other effects, feeling it and wanting a nice place to relax, being denied, frustrated, leaving. Kaden Pressy said, previous parties in the past, Noah was known for doing that, gets frustrated, drunk, moves away, distances himself from everyone, isolates himself to cool down, and then once everything has settled, the dust has settled, then Noah would return back to the party and things would be okay. He would be welcomed, supposedly. But this time round, Noah didn't get the chance to return back to the party and later found dead on the highway. So when Noah was walking away, supposedly heading east, how far did he go? And the theory was maybe he stopped at a certain point, and if there were any vehicles parked down that dirt road a bit further on out of sight, he could have climbed into the back of one and sat down, laid back, and because of being drunk, eventually passed out and went into a deep sleep. And then, if at some point people were leaving the party, based on what I remember, Stevie Howard did leave a comment on Facebook in the past, can't find it since, where she said whilst the property cameras surveillance weren't working, a bit of footage at a certain time did work. After Noah had left, walked away, there was supposedly surveillance footage of some Texas boys leaving shortly after Noah did. Kind of eye-opening. That theory, possibility that those Texas boys that may have left after Noah could have been the ones that went to the vehicle that Noah was in the back of. And if the Texas boys didn't know or didn't think to look, they wouldn't know. Getting into the vehicle, driving off, heading north down the highway, as in trying to get back home. And in doing so, when driving, Noah wakes up or is startled by the noise or movement, slightly disorientated after a bit of a deep sleep, still hungover from being drunk, not quite there with it, not quite stable on his feet in the back of a moving vehicle, off balance, possibly falling out the back or the side of the vehicle, shorts catching on the side of the vehicle. As he goes one way, the shorts remain and then eventually blow off and then collect in the middle of the highway. Noah hits the ground, rolls, and eventually lands at the hard shoulder. And whether that's it and fatal, or if he's then finished off by another vehicle that comes on by and clips him, runs over him, but he's already dead by then, that could have caused the additional injuries. One event leading to another in a short space of time. That's one of the examples that Tim Daniels evolved on. Not just falling out the vehicle, but then being hit, clipped, or run over by a following one in a short space of time, possibly. So not everybody agreed with it. Some people got very defensive. There's no need to get defensive. It's just a theory. It's an idea. As long as that wording is used, no damage can be done. Unlike some other people in other areas that worded it as an absolute fact when it was far from that. So we've seen it ourselves. That's the backstory behind the possibilities of Noah falling out of the vehicle and being found where he was. And people, some that said that, would have been influenced with what they already knew about Noah firsthand or by others, that Noah was in a similar situation in the past. It just didn't result in death. Let's head on over now to some of the origins of where it talks about that. What you're looking at on screen right now was actually from, I believe, the case discussion page, post. It was a screenshot within the comment section response about talks of a rodeo and whatnot. And this screenshot appears to be from a Facebook Messenger DM, someone and Brooke Bounds Carter, not with the absolute full context, but we'll just work with what we've got here. Brooke Bounds Carter, known as BBC, says, "It doesn't, but Noah was absolutely known for wandering off." I mean, okay, fair enough. If someone just saw that by BBC, it's normal for Noah to wander off. He's absolutely known for doing it. People would say, oh yeah, how would BBC know? She wasn't there. She wasn't in the country. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But she does know what she's talking about here, because it can be backed up by Kaden Pressy, who was actually there and has been a witness to it firsthand in the past when he said Noah normally walks off. So that bit at least is consistent, which is a positive. Because in this case, more so the community, as reckless and messy and chaotic as it can be, the best place to find peace is to find consistency. And that's an example of it. But beside that, BBC said, 2 weeks before this, I'm guessing BBC means 2 weeks before the party Noah attended and died at, that Noah randomly laid in the back of a truck bed and woke up in Oklahoma City from Duncan the next morning, had to use their phone to call Jack Newton, and Carter Combs to come get him. Now, why did Jack and Carter have to come and collect Noah? Why not just Jack? Maybe because Jack and Carter were together hanging out at the time. BBC says, Jack Newton's number was the only number that Noah knew by heart. He was a kid, a wild one. I absolutely hate it happened, and I know the kids deal with it every day, that they wish they would have found him and got him back to the house. He showed up drunk. So BBC says Noah Presgrove showed up drunk at the party, brought his own alcohol. None of them were forced to drink. Yes, were they drinking at Avery's house? Yes. Alicia's niece, Georgia, and her friend, Breely, showed up super drunk, and Avery told them to stay because she didn't want them driving, which is a responsible thing to do. But to keep them at a party where there's older people and underage drinking and alcohol, not the best environment to be in, but it is a double-edged sword. You keep them present so they're safe from driving or crashing, but you're keeping them in an environment where it can be just as dangerous in other ways. The best thing that Avery could have done at the time was keep tabs eyes on the two girls, call the parents if the phone number was possible, and wait until they're collected. That would have been the best thing to do. However, because of the age, the gender, looking out for one another, and the theme of a party, I don't think Avery at that time in the mindset would have been thinking, right, I've got to babysit these people, do all the responsible actions and get the parents to come and collect them. It should have been it would have been the right thing to do, and it should have been done, but likely in the moment it wouldn't have been thought of. But, things have happened. But it's just interesting how it's mentioned up here about how I know the kids deal with it every day, but they wish they would have found Noah and got him back to the house. Is that meaning guilt? That they, besides trying to find him successfully, they wished that they went searching for Noah sooner, instead of just witnessing Noah walking off into the dark, heading east, that they wished they went after Noah immediately to get him back. In hindsight, yes, you can think strongly in that sense. You can feel responsible, even if it's got nothing to do with you. And I'm just talking in vague there, in general. Because when a bad thing happens, then you can reflect back on it after and think, I could have done this, I could have done that. But naturally, at the time, there was only so much that you could do. There was only so much that you could control. And you need to remind yourself often, or at least other people need to remind you of that for that perspective and balance. In regard, though, to the Noah Presgrove case specifically, were there any anomalies or factors which indicated that Noah Presgrove was in a bad way, in a vulnerable way, or a dangerous situation? Because if any of that ticked the box, you could say someone or some people could have done more in those circumstances. But if it's widely known that Noah Presgrove absolutely walks off, wanders left, right and centre, why would anyone need to worry? It's like any other time. People would be anticipating Noah's return. Oh, he's gone, he's absent, he'll return back anyway, no need to fuss or worry. Yet he didn't. Give or take a bit of a delay, and then it kicked in within people thinking, right, this isn't quite normal. You can look at it in different ways, of course, but you let me know. It's just interesting, the timing of this, that it was 2 weeks before the party. Noah was in the back of a truck, fell asleep, and woke up in Oklahoma City and needed to be collected by Jack Newton, his best friend, and Carter Combs, Jack's girlfriend at the time. Interesting. But did it cause a massive outrage or a massive big deal? Probably not. Maybe laughed about it, joked to an extent. But it goes to show that if it really did happen, it didn't end negatively on that occasion. But if it did happen when Noah was at this party, September 2023, Labor Day, Monday the 4th, what was so different on that occasion? And we can look at the anomalies about that and break it down very shortly. But it's interesting. And obviously the reference here about Noah showing up drunk, brought own alcohol. That's what BBC says. But it's also what Jack Newton had said, either in one of the parts in True Crime interviews, or more so the wrongful death lawsuit in his response along with Caleb when talking about the alcohol situation. Saying that, Noah had his own alcohol, showed up drunk, other people did too, so it's not all on me. Do you remember that? So let's zoom out and transition on to the next comment, which was another screenshot within the comment thread, but from a different point of view. As you see, case discussion group, August 5th, 2024, but that's some of a screenshot anyway. This is by a person called Kobe Aragon. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Kobe could well be a friend to Kaden Pressy. Whether Kobe is a witness to Noah Presgrove at some point, a close friend to Noah, who knows. But let's just see what's mentioned here. Kobe said to Aubrey, some person online, I do not remember him spitting on anyone, that although I wasn't with him all night either, they started arguing after the rodeo before I had left to grab something to eat, and they were still there when I got back to check on him. Who's him? I'm guessing Noah Presgrove. Right. So Kobe is somewhat familiar with Noah. Let's just reread that under the terms of Noah Presgrove. I do not remember Noah Presgrove spitting on anyone, although I wasn't with Noah all night either. Right, so this appears to be before the party even started. They started arguing, as in Noah was arguing with someone. But who's the other person? I'd left to grab something to eat, and Noah and whoever was still there. When I got back to check on Noah to make sure everyone was good before I went home, as far as him, as in Noah falling asleep in someone's truck and being driven to Oklahoma City, I never heard of that happening. He drove himself that night. So from what I remember, I'd say it's false, unless it happened on another occasion. Yes, I know Kaden Pressy very well. Me and him have been friends since we could walk, went to school together, often over the years when we were in the same district, and personally, his recollection of the weekend, the party, is probably going to be the most accurate. Well, that aged very well, didn't it? You're going to get from anyone there that weekend. So as far as him being genuinely honest over everything that he's talked about, yes, he's being honest. Right. So Kobe is backing up his friend Kaden, but did Kobe ever see the Partners in True Crime interview Kaden and then compare it with the police one? Because there were major discrepancies in how things were worded and addressed. And there might be factors to excuse it and to explain, but still, discrepancies are discrepancies. It can be confusing for the viewer, the consumer listening in. But this is an interesting situation, a rodeo event of some sort. And the mention or a reference of Noah falling asleep in a truck and being driven to a city, Kobe says, I never heard of that happening. Noah, but Noah drove himself that night. So, is it a false event? Has it been manipulated, adjusted to fit a certain narrative being applied to the case of Noah Presgrove's death? You could argue that, unless, as Kobe said, it happened on another occasion. Interesting. BBC made the reference to 2 weeks before the party. Did Kobe acknowledge the date or the time? I don't think so. Interesting. Was there being friends, okay, honest, I'd take his word over anyone's that was there that night in a heartbeat. Do you know that Noah and Avery were arguing about? And Kirby, honestly don't remember. I know she wasn't very happy with whatever they were arguing about. If this is to do with a rodeo, if this is to do with an event weeks before the party, for example, it goes to show that there's a bit of a history between Noah and Avery and verbal tension, disagreements, disapproval, being agitated, frustration. Whether alcohol's involved in the mix or not, it's like there's a period where it carries over to the party. But obviously, it couldn't have been that bad, because if it was weeks before the party, like BBC said, and Kobe's talking about the same event, and there was arguing with Noah and Avery, if it was that bad, you wouldn't think Noah would be welcome to her birthday party, would you, at the party house, weeks on? So obviously it wasn't that bad, it wasn't that major or big of a deal. But still, very interesting. Whilst there was additional discussions on the case discussion page and on Facebook in regard to this whole mention of Noah falling out the back of a vehicle, and how in the past it happened, but not falling out, but falling asleep. It could have been repeated. I said, I'm here to break it down bit by bit because you can look at it in different ways. And even if there's a level of guilt or responsibility, what certain partygoers felt, they could have done this, they could have done that. I think when we look at it ourselves, what Noah could have done, history may have repeated itself, but did Noah learn from it? Would that determine whether it really happened or not? But then equally, whether he did or didn't, when people went searching, could history have repeated itself there for the others who knew of what happened in the past but didn't think to act back then? Would they have applied it this time round at the party, as in checking the back of a pickup, checking, round the back of a vehicle to see if anyone was in there, if Noah fell asleep? There was no mention of that. It was more focused on go to the highway, round the Sandplank crossing, up and down, have a look. Was Noah there? No, and then return back. But did they take any steps before that, as in searching certain areas? It's quite deep in a way, but it can be simplified. But as simplified as it can be, you can't neglect the depth and importance and the possible anomalies which stand out to previous times. Because this rodeo event, whether it be they were there at the time and then on the way back, or they were on the way to a certain event, depending. And it got to a point or time where they had to leave or move on, head on. But for some reason, Noah Presgrove fell asleep in the back of a pickup, in the back of a truck. Was it a stranger's one? Was it a friend, an acquaintance, a best friend, a close friend, or what exactly? For Noah to fall asleep in the back of a truck, if that's what supposedly happened in the past, he survived. So would people be likely to make that event up, or is it true that it really did happen? You can argue and say it may have been twisted and people may have used a past event but changed how it actually ended up, the outcome. By, if you used to twist it and say, yeah, there was a rodeo event, and there might have been some arguing, but Noah Presgrove made the choice to go here or there and drive about, and he didn't fall asleep. Well, then you can't use that event then to justify the possible cause of death for Noah Presgrove when he walked off on foot at 3:30. One involves walking off on foot. The other in the past involved Noah supposedly driving off somewhere. So to, bridge that gap, to use a historical event of it already happening so then it can back up the reliability and the likelihood of it reoccurring, because when you've got something to compare it with, the chances increase. So those that want to make you believe that it's an accident and nothing else, and it's simple as Noah walked off, climbed into the bed of a truck, fell asleep, passed out. Other people left the party shortly after, got in that vehicle, drove off. Noah then woke up startled, not knowing what was happening, may have realised or not, oh, this is happening again, or didn't even have time to think. And as he stood up, trying to make sense of everything around him, disorientated, fell out, and the beginning of the end. If any of that happened, and if something similar without the death or the falling out occurred in the past, people could then use the past to justify the present when talking about the party and the cause of death. If the past did not happen, but someone wanted to use something similar, they may twist the outcome. Now, this is only just an example what I'm using. What BBC states is somewhat different to what Kobe has mentioned. But it really comes down to whether what BBC is talking about is the same thing that Kobe is talking about, or if it was two separate events, two separate occasions. Well, on one occasion, Noah Presgrove did fall asleep in the back of a vehicle and ended up waking up and was in Oklahoma City, far, far away from where he was supposed to be and needed picking up. That event could have happened at some point. But then another time when Kobe, Kaden's friend, was present around Noah at some point, and it was to do with a rodeo or another rodeo event. On that occasion, Noah didn't fall asleep in the back of a vehicle. So what these different people say could all be true, but they're not all talking about the same thing. We've had this situation, but like a microcosm, within the case of Noah Presgrove, where you got Kaden Pressy and then you've got Tyler Hardy. What they say about each other differs. They don't see eye to eye because they physically didn't see eye to eye when at the scene. So they believe, or one or the other believes, at different times, meaning a big difference in the timeline. The 6 in the morning onwards one, and then Kaden's 5:15 one. But you can bridge that gap by saying they may have not seen each other, and they may talk differently when comparing notes, but there might be a little gap, bridging of the gap to say what Kaden encountered being told to leave the highway, the scene, and a person in a high-vis jacket telling him to go, and then Tyler Hardy not seeing Kaden, but overhearing and partially seeing a person in a high-vis jacket telling someone to leave, and that someone could have been Kaden. But Kaden did not see that onlooker witness known as Tyler Hardy at the time. So Tyler had no clue who the high-vis jacket was talking to, and Kaden had no clue who was watching in the background blindly. So that possibility, Kaden's story can differ to Tyler's because they don't see eye to eye, yet they could have been same place, same time, but a different perspective and peripheral vision. So it can change everything, right? In a more isolated event, this whole rodeo situation, much more distant apart because not the same place or the same time, but literally different events and different days. So what BBC said could have been true. What Kobe says could well be true, but they aren't talking about the same thing. If by any chance they were talking about the same thing, then clearly one person must be right, the other person must be wrong. And it's trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong. And if it's under those circumstances, then it falls under the category of the Noah Presgrove case, as in differing stories about the same event. And why would anyone do that? To cause misdirection, to try and excuse and defend others involved who could be to blame. What I would say, in my opinion, to break it down even more, for in the past, Noah to fall asleep supposedly in the back of a vehicle to end up elsewhere, and it was okay, as in he was safe. For that time of going from one place to Oklahoma City, he didn't wake up, he only woke up when arriving at the undesired location. So what was so different then about Noah as a theory falling asleep in the back of a pickup, and then guys getting in, then driving off from the party, heading north down the highway, and Noah falling out to land on the floor and be where he is, and for the driver or passenger to have no clue or account of Noah being there because they didn't expect or anticipate Noah to be in the back in the first place. So if they didn't know Noah's there to begin with, they weren't going to know after either, and there was no cue or visual auditory reminder because there was no CCTV footage or cameras working at that spot or onwards to show people driving or a license plate and Noah in the back. So no one would really know under those circumstances. It's quite, messy in a way. But like I'm saying, an event which may have happened in the past, if it really did happen, then it can serve as genuine appliance for at the party. History could have repeated itself. And under those circumstances, how likely is it? Not 100% guaranteed, but a lot higher in chance of it happening than if there was nothing to compare with. If there was nothing to compare with and it's never happened before, the chances of it happening now would be drastically lower. I mean, another side event was what some partygoers had said, or people online speaking on behalf of other people, had said that Noah Presgrove at a previous party walked off and then was either hiding or resting in a ditch, right? And that's why people couldn't find him immediately. And then they eventually found Noah and went back to the party. If that's true, how does that apply to Noah Presgrove's situation at the party, September 2023? That when Noah walked off heading east, he, went into a ditch for a bit? And when people went out searching, they couldn't find him. And then Noah then decided to get back up and continue on, walking north. And that's why at 5:15, 5:20, when a stranger, passerby at the time, gone by, then saw a supposed naked person walking in a ditch. And that was Noah. Is that how you add the appliance in? But once again, it doesn't all fall back on Noah in regard to history repeating itself. It can also fall back on party goers and witnesses to previous events physically or hearing about it afterwards, and then did history repeat itself again on that occasion at the party? And when I say history repeating itself, we're not just applying it to Noah. History repeating itself as in him falling asleep in the back of a vehicle yet again. Or history repeating itself, Noah hiding in a ditch from partygoers yet again. It's the history repeating itself with the friends of Noah, the other partygoers, as in what they didn't do last time, did they not do again this time? They didn't learn from their past mistakes, or they didn't learn from what they didn't consider at the time, which they could have considered this time round. If everything was all the same, the outcome too would be, to an extent. And if nothing changed, you wouldn't expect anything different. But Noah ended up dead on this occasion, this time round. So what was the anomaly there? If Noah was able to fall asleep in the back of a vehicle back then and be transported a fair bit of distance, whether that be from Duncan to Oklahoma City or wherever to Oklahoma City, quite a bit of distance covered, and Noah's loosely in the back of a pickup, but doesn't fall out, isn't woken up, and manages to just remain somewhat safe in a somewhat dangerous environment. If Noah survived that, then why wasn't he able to survive the supposed falling asleep in the back of the pickup from the party house and then heading north? What was so different this time round? Was Noah Presgrove as drunk as he was in the past as he was this time at the party, or was it vice versa? Was Noah Presgrove startled by a noise, a bump in the road, some form of movement or a noise which woke him up, compared to in the past? You know, at the end of the day, likely a vehicle would be static and still, and then falling asleep or resting in the back of one, passing out, drunk or not, deep sleep, you would think, and then someone or people get into the vehicle, not in the back, but the front, and then drive off. But those so-called strangers that drove to Oklahoma City, were they even aware that Noah was in the back in the first place? Because if they weren't aware, well then, you know, you can't compare those same said people with the partygoers because it could be different people at the end of the day. You've got to be lenient there. But if some people can be blind or not think to look in the back and just assume everything's fine and just drive off, then realise later, oh, someone was asleep in the back of the vehicle. The same could have happened with the lack of awareness, the lack of spatial awareness, the lack of thought and consideration. You pair it with at a party where there's alcohol and other stuff. There are distractions, there are noises, there's other things going on, but are you going to be quite there with it? Look at Jasmine Milan that did that snap at 3:41 or something, or 3:42 in the morning. And she said Noah's missing and she was half smiling, but she wasn't even looking at the camera. She was looking away, probably because she was a bit drunk, not quite there with it. And when you're not quite there with it, the emotions and everything haven't sunken in just yet. You might disassociate from what's really going on, something more serious. Distracted by the mood, the tone, the environment, the party, having fun, laughing, joking, being drunk, being relaxed and loose, letting your hair down, and not understanding the true consequences of what's going on right now or what could happen next. So when it did set in a little that Noah was missing and they started searching for Noah, whilst Noah walked away drunk and possibly vulnerable, what was the state of the partygoers, the friends of Noah, like when they went out searching? If they went along the highway and went to the sandplank crossing, were they under the influence of alcohol? Were they drunk? Yes or no? The reason why this is important, besides putting the blame on partygoers and who could be responsible for it, if a genuine search was done, what was the quality of the search like? Because I know you could throw in the factors of partygoers not taking it too serious, if they're drunk, if they're not quite there with it, the consequences haven't kicked in yet because they're not quite there with it. And then if they themselves was to use historical events in the past. Noah, probably in a field, and when it gets too warm, he'll return back, like what Jack said at 5:30 in the morning, supposedly, when woken up by Jasmine about the news of Noah missing, and Jack played it off, oh, it's nothing, it's happened before, no big deal. Really? If you got something to compare it with in the past, whether it happens often or not, you might use that as a crutch to protect yourself from worry, because you don't want to think the worst case scenario. So you will hold on to a positive memory, a funny moment, or something memorable in the past, which can have appliance in the present to deal and to cope with the moment. It can be a defense mechanism within the mind. And, with anyone else talking about Noah falling asleep in the back of a truck, or more so in the ditch, or at one point Jack's saying, or some other parts go, that Noah may have hitched a ride back home because he did that once before. Right, so we're just throwing off all these past examples, one-off events, or happened once or twice. Oh yeah, Noah fell asleep here, drove over there. Noah catched a ride here, someone drove him over there. Noah fell asleep over here and then found later. Noah wandered off, because it's normal. Noah wandered off into a field once before, once in a ditch, once driven elsewhere, once fallen asleep. These one-time events, same partygoers or different people using them to try and reason, to provide a bit of perspective on what's likely happened to Noah this time round, applying the past with the present, right? People can use the past to justify the present, but it doesn't always apply. It's not always the same outcome. You can get anomalies, you can get differences. Just because a person decides to go on a jog every single day through a park, do you honestly expect the same outcome every single time? That you simply run through the park and it's sunny and it's perfect, and then you make it back and then relax? You think that's possible to do 365 days of the year, every time heading out at a certain time, going through the same location for that consistency, that routine, and seeing the sunshine? No, there's a change of season. Weather can be unpredictable. Clouds could emerge. It could be heavy rainfall in the park compared to other times when it's sunny. Depending on the day it falls on, people may be off work, other people may have a bank holiday, people could be hanging out in the park and walking about, so there's more traffic about, more pedestrians, more noise. You can't expect or anticipate the same exact outcome based on one day and apply it 364 days of that year onwards. There will be days where it will be different visually, auditory, visually, how it feels. Okay? You can't expect the same result and the outcome every single day onwards. There will be different days, some good, some bad, some busier, some quieter, etc. For Noah Presgrove at a party, whilst it's known for him to respond and react in a certain way, the initial walking off, as what Kaden said, as what BBC said, consistent and probably true. But it's what happens after that point. It's like parts of a mechanism, cogs and gears. Some of them remain a constant in life, but then other elements don't function always, or don't function the same as always. But there's a slight twist, there's a slight turn this time round, that a person could stick to the same route when jogging out on a run. Same exact route, but things can change with time, the environment. One day you can run through and it's fine. The next day there's been a storm, a tree's collapsed, and now the path's blocked and you can't do your regular run. So you've got to take a detour or cut the walk or the run short and then return back. So you experienced a different encounter on that one day. It was an anomaly in which something has changed, something has occurred, which has changed your plan, your route, your idea, but it was unexpected. You weren't anticipating it, and it's something that doesn't happen often. Trees falling, blocking pathways. Weather so extreme that it causes that in the first place. You might not be used to extreme weather, so you're not used to trees falling. Then you're not used to pathways being cut off. And when you least expect it, it's when it's most impactful. And when it's most impactful and when you least expect it, you're not prepared for it. And an anomaly catches you off guard. And then in that moment, there can be a sudden fight or flight mechanic in reacting to that event, to that exposed variable, as what you do next. So when Noah Presgrove was known to walk away from the party, or a party in general, other times he simply walks away to cool down. In regard to what he actually does when cooling down, it could be his own ritual, his own routine, or it might differ from time to time. But one thing that remains a constant is he normally walks off and he normally returns back. But on this one occasion at the party house, September 2023, he did walk away, but he didn't return back. So what factor, what anomaly stood out this time round compared to other times in the past? Is it an anomaly that occurred when Noah was walking away, when Noah was further away, when Noah Presgrove, even before leaving the party house? Where did the anomaly lie? Where did the anomaly begin? Is it just one anomaly or multiple? And that could be anything. It could be an event. It could be an encounter. It could be a conversation. It could be a certain level of tension, a certain theme amongst people at the party or an event that took place. Like when we talked about the side-by-side rollover. Is that something that normally happens at parties, which Noah attends? Noah normally gets in a side-by-side and then it rolls over and then there's possible issues? Probably not. But what about alcohol? If that's a causation behind the reckless driving, yeah, the alcohol can remain a constant. At that party, at previous parties. Yes, you can blame alcohol for Noah's death and you can blame alcohol for this and that, but there's got to be another factor, a more important factor, which is an anomaly, which is different. Because if there was alcohol at a party a week before or 2 months before, and the parties that Kaden attended with Noah all the times in the past where there was alcohol and Noah did get drunk and Noah did walk away and Noah did return back, then alcohol wasn't the problem then. By law, it's a problem because of breaking rules, laws, social hosting rules are broken. There needs to be justice there, but people only push for it when there's a death and when it's too late. But when reverting back to a constant theme, alcohol isn't the be-all and end-all because it was used in the past and consumed and things were somewhat okay. So beside alcohol, what was different this time for things to end so badly? For the side-by-side rollover, that's maybe something that wouldn't normally happen. What was so different about this occasion? Is it all down to alcohol and Noah recklessly driving? Is it down to a distraction? Is it down to the weight distribution and imbalance within the vehicle when you've got 5 passengers and how they may be in that vehicle could have caused it to roll slightly or cause that momentum shift? When Noah turned and then the people move in the vehicle, it could have tipped. Basically, there can be more additional factors at hand which create a bigger picture of a certain event, small scale, big scale, or with a person trying to understand them. It's not just one factor, it can be many. A person that's had experiences, it's not just one, but it could be a cluster. One may be the big factor and the main feature, and so that's talked about a lot, like with the party, Noah Presgrove, a key factor that's always talked about, like alcohol, as with a person in an isolated event, a certain reference point to the past. But then it's about acknowledging the importance of, yes, however, there are additional things at play which play a role too in the lead up to something, play an important agency and role. So alcohol isn't the be-all and end-all. It can be an enabling factor to things getting out of hand and going wrong. But it's about looking for that additional factor, sub-factor, which was different this time round for it to occur. The sub-factor and the anomaly behind Noah's death. The sub-factor and the anomaly behind Noah Presgrove possibly heading off in a certain direction compared to other times, maybe covering more distance than other times. And then the reaction from people more so. As said, and I'll just repeat it again, but slightly different to make it clear. History can repeat itself. Whether it be Jam Sandwich or Brenda made a valid point in recent time on my channel and said, well, maybe it happened back then, but surely Noah Presgrove would have learned from his mistakes back then. He wouldn't have made the same mistake to fall asleep in the back of a vehicle to then wake up elsewhere. Not everybody learns from their mistakes. Some people don't learn because they're not aware of them in the first place. Other people don't learn because it's too hard to change. Some people don't learn from their mistakes because it's not that important to them to make that change because they're not really bothered. No, Presgrove, was he distressed? Was it bad? Was it negative, the event from waking up in Oklahoma City after falling asleep in the back of a vehicle? A form of negative reinforcement could take place where you're less likely to repeat a certain action because of the consequences and the problems that come from it. If you do that said action or if you repeat it, you get punished in some way. You don't want the consequence, you avoid it, negative reinforcement. But you pursue something else because you get rewarded for it, which is positive reinforcement. But sometimes people will learn from their mistakes if it's happened more than once. So then for it to settle into the mind to think, right, I need to change, need to stop doing that, need to change my ways based on thinking or physical actions, need to do more, need to do less, whatever that might be. If it's a one-time thing in the past, history can repeat itself again because there wasn't enough time for that person to make the change. Sometimes one event, one experience is more than enough to get someone to change as a person for the better, for the sake of themselves, because that one event, even though it only happened once, it was significant enough, maybe life-changing, and it served as a reminder to not want to be in that position again. So you don't repeat the same mistakes as you did back then, or you don't do the same actions as you did back then, you change onwards. Sometimes problems from the past because of personal mistakes made, but it's not always a self-blame game because other times events negative in the past had nothing to do with the person. It wasn't their fault, it was out of their control. So it's unfortunate. And sometimes when things are out of control and it's not the person's fault, how do you change it? How do you avoid things repeating itself in the future? Subtle changes, timing, who you're around, the type of environment, making changes to better yourself, but not to blame yourself for the past, not to blame yourself for making the changes now. But, in other occasions where it's just down to recklessness, bad choices, mistakes, changes can be made there. Whether the person blames themselves or not, changes can be made there. If Noah Presgrove regretted what he did back then, or falling asleep and then waking up in Oklahoma, Noah was either frustrated with himself or just didn't want that to happen again because it caused too much stress, or it had a strain, it caused tension with his best friend having to go out and collect him. So Noah would make a conscious choice not to repeat that again because it's a form of, a negative consequence. You don't want that experience again, so you're not going to repeat it, or you'll try and consciously make the active choice and avoid it. Avoidance. But whilst Brenda or whoever made that question of, did Noah learn from his mistakes? So probably he didn't do it again. So Noah wouldn't have fallen asleep in the back of a vehicle, and Noah wouldn't have ended up on the highway that way. He ended up in other ways. I understand. It just comes down to, did Noah truly feel the impact and the weight behind the consequences of that past action if it really did happen? Would Noah Presgrove have to have experienced more of that to come into his head that he doesn't want that to happen again? Look at this. This is an example. Kaden Pressy had said in one of the Partners in True Crime interviews, probably the true part two interview where Alicia did the talking, Kaden sat there, and it was a private video. It was never publicly released, but we did a summary of it, and it was leaked on the Sofa Sleuth page in the past on Facebook. And Alicia and Kaden were talking, and it was brought up about once in the past when Kaden turned 18 and he was in his vehicle, possession of alcohol, drunk, parked up in a car parking lot and fell asleep. Didn't want to drive because of being drunk, but still a police person showed up, Kaden got in trouble, went to jail for a few hours or for a day, and Kaden sweared to himself that he wasn't going to make that same mistake again. He wasn't going to repeat that ever again. Fast forward onwards, a year or two later, the party, 2023, and Kaden said it tears him up till this day that he turned down Noah when Noah wanted a ride home. But Kaden explained to us and to Noah back then, Kaden wasn't fit to drive because of being drunk. Alcohol in his blood system, it wouldn't have been a good idea. He didn't want to get in trouble. Kaden did not want to get in trouble with police because he already experienced that a year before or so when parked up and in the possession of alcohol. Getting in trouble with the police, Kaden faced a consequence through his own actions, and he made a conscious effort to not repeat that, at the cost of it playing on his mind post-death of Noah, when reflecting back thinking, if I had broken the rules, gone against and made the same mistake of history repeating itself in the past, at the cost of possibly getting in trouble, I could have ensured that Noah made it back home at least. But at the time of the party, you're not going to blame yourself because there's no reason to. Kaden explained his situation and Noah truly understood it. Kaden was taking in mind the safeguarding and safety of Noah, because Kaden behind a wheel, drunk, wouldn't be a good idea for Noah or Kaden, and could get in trouble with the police. And with it already happening in the past, did not want to repeat history. Kaden learned from his mistakes. Noah understood that at the party. Nothing wrong there. Kaden did the right thing. I know some people could say, well, there might have been some other partiers that could have done this or could have done that, but they chose not to because maybe they were drunk as well. But ultimately, putting aside Carter Combs, who was supposedly the only designated driver not drunk, if any of the other partygoers even considered giving Noah a ride home, whilst it could have ensured higher chances of Noah's safety in some ways by getting away from the party and people, it could have increased the chances of death in other ways by drunk, reckless driving if anything had gone wrong. That's why, even though it sounds a bit dark, to some extent, death could have been inevitable for Noah under those circumstances, unless Carter Combs, who was a designated driver, was able to successfully drive Noah home, and if Noah wanted that still at a certain point at the party and didn't turn it down and reach down. That's really the only exception. But it's understandable why Kaden Pressy blames himself afterwards, because he feels that he was at one point in a position, a situation to make a difference. But at the time, Kaden made the right choice, was thinking responsibly. And then afterwards, post-death, you look back, you try and be critical, you try and pick up on little details and blame yourself, torture yourself. It's very understandable why that can happen, but it's also important to not blame yourself. But it's hard to change that perspective when it's yourself. That's why you need the presence of other people to provide alternative perspective and all of that. But I'm just giving you an example, beside Noah, of history repeating itself or not, and did they learn or not from their past mistakes? Kaden did. But what about Noah Presgrove? Did Noah Presgrove learn from his mistakes of falling asleep in the back of a vehicle or a stranger's vehicle and driven elsewhere? Did Noah ensure not to do that if and when he walked away from the party house? If he saw any vehicles, was he like, I'm not going to pass out here. I'm not going to get into one because I know what will happen. But look, this is the thing. Sometimes you can't learn from your mistakes if you're not in the right frame of mind to make an informed, practical decision. If you're not quite there with it in the moment, or you're vulnerable in some way, how can you learn from the past or think of the past when your mind is preoccupied with other thoughts in the moment? It's not your fault. Things are out of your control. It makes it more difficult. For Noah to be possibly drunk still, to be drunk still, whether he's disorientated or not, depending on his physical and psychological state from walking away from the party, from the side-by-side rollover earlier, from any verbal fights with Avery and Jack at that time or just before that, a lot of stress, tension, trying to get away from it, a lot going on in the mind. Are you going to be making the most informed, best decisions and choices? Are you going to be able to weigh everything out and say, right, this is what happened in the past when I decided to go into a ditch. This is what happened in the past when I decided to crawl into the back of a pickup. So I'm going to make sure I don't do any of that this time round. Is Noah honestly going to be demonstrating introspection at a time like that when also drunk? Maybe not. So history can repeat itself, especially at times where the person has the inability to think practically and properly, because there's a lot of stresses, there's a lot of factors going on in the moment. Sometimes for it to be drilled inside the mind, you need to go through many, many, many encounters of the same outcome with the same consequences to eventually learn from it. You'll always get those exceptions where some things don't need to be changed, even though the consequence, the outcome was bad. It's just because either wrong place, wrong time, wrong person, wrong combination of things, but the actual overall theme of a certain action or a certain want or a certain need is valid and fine. It's just not the right time. In terms of Noah, a party. Nothing wrong with being or going to a party. Past parties could have gone a certain way and was okay. This party went drastically wrong for Noah, out of his control possibly, and was different this time round. Nothing wrong with wanting to go or to party, to have that experience, to be around other people. But if it's the wrong place or it's the wrong time, the outcome can be different. Whether it be right now when it's too late, or if it be in the past, a past party with certain consequences. You shouldn't blame yourself. You shouldn't have to change who you are. You shouldn't have to change what you want or disassociate from it. If you want parties, you like parties, you should be able to do that and continue it. But the consequences from the past could just be wrong environment, wrong place or wrong time with the wrong crowd of people. But the theme can stay the same. The want can stay the same. The hunger can stay the same. But the changes of who you are around can change. The timings of how long you're at a party for can change. The things that you want and don't want, the consent can be applied. So this is what I mean. The overall framework, the general theme or the general factor doesn't have to change, but the inner workings within and the little cogs could be adjusted. So for Noah Presgrove, who probably liked partying, due to past parties under those circumstances, it ended certain ways, but different to the final party. But on that occasion, the consequence and outcome outweighed everything else, making it impossible for Noah to learn from it or to make adjustments or to get away from it. Like with Noah wanting to join the military and was planning on doing that, but delaying it as well, I think, for one of his cousins to join at the same time. The timing of all that in place was normal and fine. If Noah Presgrove had anticipated what was going to happen to him with that particular party, maybe Noah may have made the choice of not going or leaving sooner, but then attending a different party with a different crowd of people another time. As in, what you originally want can stay the same. You shouldn't have to lose that about yourself. But who you operate around and how you act around certain people, that can change, and you have the choice to make that change. But Noah Presgrove didn't have that choice or chance to change because he wasn't expecting what was to happen next. So it goes a lot deeper than maybe what some people could think. Does it come to the conclusion of explaining the anomalies? Well, that's still an ongoing process, but there's got to be a different factor this time round, which either influenced Noah walking away compared to other times in the past, or there was a factor along the way, the journey when Noah was walking off, which either changed his decisions on where he goes, what he does next, or if it's an anomaly, a factor which was out of his control, as in the presence of another person that decided to follow him or to show up at an unexpected time. In the moment, a grudge from before, and things escalated. If people are saying there was a fight or there was a beatdown, well, then likely it didn't happen in the past because parties Noah went to, he survived. He didn't end up dead. So this time round, something different must have happened. The act of walking away is the general framework and is agreed upon by different people that it's a normal thing for Noah to do. That doesn't change. That remains a constant, like with the alcohol. So what else was different this time round for the outcome overall to be completely different? Because can you really link it back to the past, as in what Noah may have done back then and how it was repeated again this time round? Maybe not quite, because the outcome was different this time round compared to back then. So if history truly repeated itself, the worst case consequence and scenario should have been Noah fell asleep in the back of a vehicle and then woke up in Texas, right? But that didn't happen. Just for that little bit of balance, unless it happened, unless this time Noah did wake up because of his subconscious mind. He had a quick memory or dream of what happened in the past. It startled him, it scared him. He woke up realizing, what have I done? Who knows? And that's what was different this time round. A little anomaly, a conscious mind, even when asleep, dream state analysis. Your eyes closed, you shut down, your brain is still active, your body is still active, dreaming, thinking, feeling, and then woken up unexpectedly. That could be the one change as to what caused Noah to stand up in the vehicle to then be unsteady on his feet and then fall out. That would be the anomaly. Noah dreaming, and it startles him, the dream, and it wakes him up. Or a noise along the road, motion of the vehicle, a bump in the road different to a previous journey. But to be honest, I'm sure there would have been bumps in the road, motion and noises back then, but Noah didn't wake up, only when arriving in Oklahoma City, supposedly. So there's got to be a rare or small anomaly, a change which caused Noah to wake up, to stand up, to fall out the vehicle, compared to back then, fell asleep and then woke up once the vehicle stopped. If history truly repeated itself, the outcome should have been the same, but it wasn't the same, so there's got to be an anomaly for the change to occur. And that's just based on that small event, an example. If you want that type of framework and process and idea to be applied to other events in this case, then be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. I really hope people do see this video specifically for the case, and even the external examples for the case, because, and I say it each time, but I think this could be one of the deepest videos yet, and it has a lot of appliance to the case. So it'd be much appreciated if you hit the thumbs up, the like button, share the video so more people get to see it, and just, if you're on mobile or on tablet device, be sure to hit the hype button below in the comment section, or if you swipe across from the comments, hit the hype button so more people get to see it, because I think it's really important. It seems like some people in the case community are using past events to either justify or to make sense of what could have happened to Noah. But it really comes down to, did the past really happen, or has it been twisted in words? Did the past really happen? And if it did, then why was the outcome different? Well, then it would be an anomaly, like I suggested. And besides all of it to do with Noah, did partygoers, with the exception of Kaden, that did learn from his mistakes in the past, did any of the partygoers learn from their past mistakes of searching in the wrong area or not considering some factors? Did they change their plan? Even when Sarah Long, sister to Stevie Howard, said, and to Jasmine on Facebook, the night before, Sunday night, Noah walked off another time and you had to go out and look for him and then find him and then return him back. If that was true, that event where Noah Presgrove walked away on the Monday and people went out searching, did they go to that same spot which they remembered Noah to be at the night before? Did they choose that spot first, or what? When Noah was in a ditch in the past, when partygoers went out this time around, did they consider that factor and think, right, let's look at the ditches first before we leave onto the highway? This is what I'm saying. And the quality of the search could differ based on whether the party goes drunk or not at the time. Going out driving, drunk, searching about drunk, vulnerable like Noah, yes or no? Even though it didn't happen under those circumstances, it could have resulted in more death or more injury down to recklessness or not quite thinking. Would the easiest action have been, and look, this is what the anomaly is when it comes to the general so-called search. What I would say is, and what would have been ideal, like with the Avery situation with Georgia and Brealey showing up earlier, Sunday night, is that there was a level of concern to go searching for Noah. If there was no concern, there'd be no search done, right? So you go out searching, you worry, it kicks in. You search, unsuccessful. Surely the feeling would get worse unless denial kicks in, trying to justify it by what's happened in the past and apply it to the present. Oh, he probably got a ride home. He probably hitchhiked. He probably found his way back home in some other way. Trying to justify it as a defense mechanism to protect oneself from becoming hyper-aroused, tense, stressed, worried, and all of that. Trying to play it down, suppress it deep into the unconscious mind, and then it might kick in afterwards. But ultimately, what could have been done, what would have been practical, probably, is to, when you've gone out searching, you assume the person's missing. When you can't find them, that's when you should report them as a missing person case. But that wasn't followed through with. Maybe because the partygoers felt, well, no big deal, happened in the past, and they're trying to justify it that way. But, if Noah was reported as a missing person, it probably wouldn't have saved him, but it would have been maybe the normal course of action. Correct me if I'm wrong, or whether you agree or not, leave it in the comment section, but it would have made a bit more sense. Some people's counterpoints online could be, well, they didn't report Noah missing because they knew he technically wasn't missing because they knew where he was, and if they did report him into police, then they would break their own cover in some way. They've got to protect themselves if they're involved in Noah's death or if someone is. But, it just would have made sense. Can't find someone, missing person, report them as a missing person. But of course, if you report someone as a missing person, investigations and searches will start from where the person was last seen, which would be the party house. So if by any chance anything did go wrong on the party house property, searches done, cadaver dogs used, whatever, more could be found than what they bargained for. So I've already done a video about that. You can look back at it for further context, but there's different ways of looking at it. As I said, general theme is trying to justify Noah's outcome. Some use it through past examples, but how likely are those examples and how likely are they to be repeated? Besides the actual injuries and the autopsy report, just based on common sense and patterns and trends, you let me know your thoughts on the matter in the comment section. Bit of a longer video this, but I hope it made sense. Appreciate those that have watched and listened along. And I'll see you next time, whenever that is. Probably tomorrow or the day after. My name's White Wrath. Goodbye and good night for now.